Welcome back to Retired Life in Mexico, Living in Mexico, No Bull Series. Today, I have a very special pair that's going to be a guest today. They run the YouTube channel Chasing the American Dream. I'd like to introduce you to Joe and Brittany. How are you doing today, Joe and Brittany?
Good, good.
Very good.
Um,
Thank you for asking.
the way I discovered you guys was on YouTube, and you make some very unique videos, not the normal YouTube videos of the beach or informational type videos. You guys kind of seem like these two adventurers that are traveling throughout Mexico and showing parts of Mexico that normally aren't the tourist areas and stuff like that. What I want to start out with today in interviewing you guys is just get a little bit of background. Where you from? What brings you to Mexico? And that type of thing. Just give a little bit about your life story and how you ended up here in Mexico.
Cool. Sounds good. Do you want to?
You go.
Okay. So, Brittany and I are originally from New York. Brittany grew up in New York State, so very, very rural New York. I grew up in the city. Once we got married, maybe after a couple of years, we decided that we didn't want to. The pandemic hit, people's lives changed, and we realized, you know what? We're kind of working our lives away. We're spending a lot of time doing things that we hate, and we would like to try to figure out a different way of life. It was around that time where my brother, who actually lives in Mexico, he's been in Mexico now in Michoacan, La Piedad is the town, the city, and so he told us, well, why don't you check out Mexico? Because I've been here for a few years now, and he loves it. And so that's when we figured, you know what? Let's take a trip and we'll see what's what over in Mexico.
So you came all the way over here to Mexico. You visited your brother-in-law, brother. It's Brittany's brother. Your
My
brother.
brother.
Okay, so you visited your brother. Brittany visited her brother-in-law. So you guys came down to Mexico and you visited. What was your experience when you? I mean, you said you came down here to Mexico and you love Mexico. You fell in love with Mexico. Tell me a little bit about that experience and why you fell in love with Mexico and kind of that first experience with your brother. I think that would be very interesting.
Cool. Would you like me to?
So we actually had come a couple of times before this time. We came the first place in Mexico that we came when we got married, a few months after, a year after we got married, was in Cabo San Lucas. That was for vacation. And then I think like a year later, no, it was a few months actually after that. We went we went with his Joe's parents and his brother and his brother's wife. And we went to different parts of Mexico. This was in 2021. And we went to different places in Michoacan. We went to we went to La Piedad, we went to Querétaro, we were in Bucerias, we were in La Paz, we were in León, Guanajuato City, various, probably missing some places, but
Yeah,
it was a lot, and we got to see a lot of Mexico, and that was kind of like our first experience, I guess you could say, with not a vacation, with experiencing the authentic Mexican culture.
yeah, and to answer your question, what I personally fell in love with Mexico right away. And when you get off the plane, in my opinion, whether you're in a tourist area or whether you're in, what I would refer to as real Mexico, because the tourist area is not necessarily what Mexico is. It's not giving you a good representation. When I first arrived in Mexico, I noticed the culture and the people and the love that came from the people that they showed to us. I can't speak for anybody else, but the love that we saw was abundant. And the culture, I fell in love with it. It's a much slower pace of life from what I can tell, from what we can tell. And so that really touched my heart and my mind. And I realized, wow, this is a place that I wouldn't mind living. So I maybe that answers your question.
Yeah. Okay. So you came down here, you visited your brother. Um, and your brother lives here in Mexico and that type of thing. I think you really fell in love with the culture, and I can relate because it's a very warm culture, very family oriented culture. Everybody gets together all the time, and it's very warm. At what point, I know that, okay, you came here to Mexico, you fell in love with Mexico, but like at what point did you guys just say, let's just get up,
Mm.
leave everything in New York, from New York, our life behind us in New York, and let's head out to Mexico? I mean, did you have a plan, or was it? I can tell you from my own personal experience, we didn't have a plan. We just fell in love with San Miguel de Allende, and next thing you know, we walked out with a contract on the house. What point did you guys just say, "Hey, this is cool. Let's just head out there, man"? It's like, I don't know, better than New York, or what your motivation? That's, I guess, what you're trying to get through. And at what point did that motivation set in to actually just come here?
So I think that did you want to say anything before me? I feel like in my from my perspective, what ended up happening was it was very planned out. So I wasn't eh, we're not retired, so we still work. And when we left New York, I left a job that was not a job, it was a career. I left a career behind me. And so I had to make a choice. And Brittany and I, we talked about it a lot. We made sure that this was something that we were prepared to do because I'm giving up not only I'm not just giving up a day job. I'm giving up a pension. I'm giving up the 401k. I'm giving up everything. So it was a big decision, but my job, the job that I had, it ended up eating up my life. And so we kind of had to come to terms with, okay, you work your life away, and maybe one day when you retire you can enjoy it, or we can try to enjoy it now. We can kind of try to enjoy every day now. And so it wasn't a spontaneous thing. I took a leave of absence from work. We came over to Mexico, like Brittany mentioned, a couple of years ago. We visited a whole bunch of places, and we got the feel for the culture. And we never stayed in a resort. It was always staying in the local areas, mingling with the locals, trying to learn the customs, because we wanted to feel what Mexico really was, to see if this was something that makes sense. Because it's not like the United States in many regards, as you know. Um, so yeah, so
No.
after we ended up taking that trip, we came home. I was on board. I was like, I'll move there tomorrow. Brittany was a little bit more reserved with her thinking. But as time went on, I think, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, as time went on, Brittany saw the benefits of living in Mexico, as far as how far your money goes, as far as the relaxed culture, as far as the kindness that people give you. Um, and just that Mexico is magnificent. The beauty here in so many regards. So I think it took Brittany a little more time to sink in. I was like, I'm gone, man. My heart's already in Mexico.
So when we went in 2021, we were in Michoacan, but we didn't visit Morelia on that trip. But what happened is, in August 2022, we were like with his parents. They were able to get their permanent residency through Joe's brother James, who's living here, and then we were like, okay, we'll get our temporary residency whether we're living in Mexico, I guess, or not, we'll get the temporary residency. So his brother is living in, Michoacan. So we went to Morelia. That's where the immigration office is. And so we all got our residencies. And when I was in Morelia, I mean, that was my first time in Morelia. That's where we are now. And I was like, wow, this city is like different than the other places in Mexico that we've been to. Well, it felt like that for me because I was like, wow, like this is like a really nice place. I mean, other cities in Mexico are nice too, but I mean, this was like, I was like, okay, this vibe, I guess I can do this vibe, like it's a very nice city, very beautiful, a lot of things here, um, really nice.
I have to say, I know I did mention like, was this spontaneous? But, I think my point is that, I mean, and you mentioned it, Joe, you gave up a career. I had a career and I got a pension and everything else. But the only difference is that I was in a career track where I could retire at 52 years old, and I did. And, but I could have gone till I was 57. Actually, last year would have been mandatory retirement for me. But a lot of people have asked me, "Oh, why did you go at 52?" And I mean, I had a fun job. I can't complain. But I guess I came to a point in time, and I think you realized it a lot younger than I did, that, you know what, there's much more to life. I think in a sense, it's still spontaneous to be able to, I think it's very brave that you actually said, hey, you know what? We're going to do this. We're going to go to Mexico. You know what? If it means giving up my career, we're going to go to Mexico and we're going to make something of it. So technically, I think it's spontaneous to be to be honest with you. I mean, I think you probably planned it like you said, you had family and you got your temporary residency, and why the heck not? Because you don't have to live there and you always have that option open. And I think you did those things the right way, especially with the financial solvency requirements always going up every year and everything else.
Wow.
But one thing I have to admire about you guys is you just took the plunge. I mean, I took the plunge, but I also took the plunge after I was already done with my career. So, I think that's something that's very, very admirable that you guys were able to do. Now, here's the next question. Do you regret it, or are you having such a great time now that you would do it all over again?
Mm. I think Ernie, I think you already know. I don't regret a thing. I don't know about Brittany, but what are your thoughts?
Oh, it's a loaded question.
I'm easy. I'm like,
I'll tell you what, we had a friend the other day, and she said to me, she's like, Brittany, are you coming back? And she's like, are you gonna stay in Mexico? And I don't like anything to sound like it's permanent because I know that like a lot of things in life is constantly changing. So I don't ever like to say like, oh, I'm always gonna live in Mexico or I'm always gonna be here because I don't know, something could happen back home where I have to go or not. But being here right now in this moment of time, I've really enjoyed it. We've made so many friends in Mexico. Like it's just amazing the amount of friends and like we were all saying how how kind people are here and friendly and just warm and um so that's been really like uh really nice.
yeah, yeah. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Honestly. And if we hadn't come here, I wouldn't have made all these friends on this trip that I've made now. So no matter what happens in the future, I can always look back on this time and be like, you know what? It's it's an adventure.
Mm,
That's what life is. It's an adventure. So, it's I'm really glad that, like we're here because it's forcing us to have to learn Spanish and to try new things. And I think everybody should try to do that if they can. Try to go out of their comfort zone.
right.
I think that's really important because, one of the things, it's funny sometimes because I see the newer generation, I have nieces and they're right now just studying, and I have three boys that one's still going through college. And it's kind of like I still don't know what I want to do. And sometimes just taking the plunge and going out on an adventure is something that you need to do. I was fortunate enough that I went straight into an adventure, whether you want to call it an adventure. I mean, it was work, but my dad always used to tell me, if you find something you're passionate about, you'll never work a day in your life. And I can actually say I never worked a day in my life. I mean, work, work. Um,
Wow.
now, but at the same time, I have to admire your bravery in saying, hey, let's just do this. And I think, Brittany, you're right. Hey, anything can happen. I mean, we're the same way. Anything can happen. But at the same time, I think it's very important that we live in the now and what's going on now. And I think we get so tied up in what happened in the past or what's the future going to hold. And I think what's really admirable about you guys is it's just sort of like, we don't know what the future is going to hold, but the heck with it. We're going to have a good time. And that's what I see in your videos. It's just, let's just have a good time and let's have an adventure. If we end up back home, we end up back home. But one thing that when we leave this world, we don't leave this world with all of the things that we have. We leave the world with all the experiences. And I think you guys are really doing that. And I commend you for that. I really do. Now, so you guys, what was your plan? Is your plan to travel throughout Mexico, all over the place, and go from one place to? You're in Morelia right now, but what's your ultimate goal as far as what you're doing now?
Right now, I think as far as Morelia goes, like Brittany mentioned, when we visited Morelia just to get our temporary residency, we fell in love with it, and it was a very special place in our hearts. So we've been bouncing around Mexico for a little while now, but we'd like to make Morelia our home base and then travel from here because doing the nomad thing is great, but Airbnbs are expensive. It's very hard to juggle your life. Sometimes you just want to come back to home. So we'd like to make Morelia more of a home base and then travel from here and still continue to explore all the beauty that Mexico has to offer and also try to show people the places that we do go, why there's so much more than the resort areas in Mexico. I mean, it's a magnificent place and it has so much to offer as far as the people, as far as the culture. Every place you go has a little bit of a different culture, a different vibe. And so it's such an amazing experience. So, as far as the planning, I think that's where we're at. Maybe did I hit the nail
No,
on the head?
no, that's yeah.
And so you guys, and I've seen a couple of your videos because what I've noticed, one of the things that you guys like to do is kind of go off the beaten path. I know that I think the first one I saw was, I think, the Tangerine Travels, Mazatlan, and you were kind of saying that, hey, you know, they stayed in the resort areas or whatever, and actually Mazatlan, that those areas where they were staying in, it's Mazatlan's a little bit of a different animal in the sense that it's not like Cancun that has resorts where you just don't leave the hotel. And
Right.
but at the same time, it's just like you go down the Malecon, you go downtown. There's certain areas that the tourists stay in. But one thing that I think you stressed in that video, but then I saw subsequent videos, is that you guys kind of like to go off the beaten path. It's like, okay, let's go to Mazatlan, but I want to go see what's outside of Mazatlan. Or let's go to Cancun, but let's go to like the little itty bitty places that nobody ever goes to. You guys seem like the kind of guys that like to go off the beaten path. Have you always been kind of adventurers and adventurous types? Or is this something that coming to Mexico, you just say, hey, we want to see the real Mexico? One of the things that I really enjoy about your videos is like I said, you show parts of Mexico that really people don't know about. And even if someone says, I wouldn't go there in the middle of the mountains or whatever, I think you went up a trail and it's a beautiful view. Maybe someone may not go up there, but you're also giving people the opportunity to see that beautiful view that you guys got to experience actually firsthand. So, I mean, are you guys like kind of adventurers in that sense? And, or is this something new for you guys?
Um, alright.
I think our answers will be a little bit
Yeah.
different. Do you want to?
So, I'm trying to think about explain. Um,
We're
Take
two
your time.
very different
yeah.
people. Two-
Like I would have loved to have stayed. Like I've never been in a resort in Mexico, and I'm not against the resorts. I'm really not. Um, but I do think it's important to to show people, like you say, like the real Mexico. It is important for people to see the real Mexico, so that people don't just think, oh, this resort is all Mexico. Um, I mean, like for a vacation, I would love to like stay in a resort and do things like that. Joe is more of like, let's stay like somewhere like not like that. So let me give you an example. When we went to Cabo San Lucas, um, we did not stay in a resort. We stayed at a hotel, and Joe said to me, he said, "I want to see the real Cabo." So we didn't have a YouTube channel then, so we couldn't show everybody, but pretty much we went around and um we saw what Cabo is outside of the resort area, outside of the beach area. We walked along. It was a lot of well, dust, very dusty.
It's very different.
Very different than the picturesque Cabo that you see on Google and things like that. But it was good that we got to see that because it helped us to get a better idea of what what is this like, because if people who are watching our channel, they want to, maybe they want thinking about moving to Mexico, so we're not just going to say, oh, hey, look, I'm in a resort, this is Mexico, or things like that. We want people to get a real feel for the areas that we go to, and so I think that's what we've been trying to do.
And one of
Yeah.
the things, you're getting a feel for those areas, but at the same time, you guys are having a lot of fun. I see that you're enjoying it a lot.
Oh yeah. I mean, that like I said before, the culture and the beauty that the country has to offer, when you combine those two things, you feel like even if you're working over here, I can't speak for everybody, but even if you're like working over here, you feel good, you know? You know how it is to have a YouTube channel. It takes a lot of work. I have 3 YouTube channels. This is my 3rd one. And
Wow.
so I do a lot of YouTube work.
Uh-huh.
I have a bodybuilding channel, I have a jewelry channel, and now I have this channel.
Uh,
Um, and each of those takes a lot of work. But when I'm here, I'm thinking about work because it takes a lot of work to put these videos together. But you don't really feel like you're working. You feel like you're in. I mean, I couldn't be happier here. Uh, to answer your question, as far as adventure types, I'm the kind of guy who I love skydiving. I love going out on jet skiing. I love doing those types of adventure things. But something that I feel will hit the answer your question a little better is I've always done it. I've always had adventure in me, but it's always been under the umbrella of security from my corporate life. So again, I left a big career move to come here. I've never once in my life ever thought that that would happen. And that was because I grew up being taught that you have to be safe. Safety is key. Get a job, die with that job, or die until, work until you get that pension, and then maybe you can live a little bit. So, in that regard, I've never ever thought I would be here in Mexico ever until it occurred to me that I hate the life that I'm living. I'm hating it just for money. I'm making a ton of money, but I'm blowing it all on the weekend just so we can have a little bit of life on Saturday and Sunday because I'm working the rest of the week. So I've always had that adventure in me, but now I feel like I can live more and be happy more and be more balanced because I had that adventure in me pent up back when I was in the States. And now it's like every day is an adventure here.
and that's what I was gonna say. Do you kind of see, I mean, I kind of relate to you because actually we have something in common. I was a personal trainer for my agency, and I have throughout the 30 years, I was a avid martial artist. I finished with jujitsu, but I can't anymore because of my cancer. I lived on adrenaline a lot of my life, and I can relate to you because skydiving and all of that stuff, it's all of this adrenaline, and it's an adventure, but it's a different kind of adventure. And do you find, like, I guess what I'm trying to get at is you're still having that adventure, but it's not the adrenaline high. It's just this experience that it's so different. And I think what I see in you is it's just like, hey, I'm still having my adventure, but it's on my terms. I'm still having my adventure, but it's not a 5 minute gratification or 20 minute or 30 minute or getting in a race car and going down the track at 1,000 miles an hour and it's over in 30 minutes or an hour or whatever that might be. Do you kind of, like you said, I think you characterized it perfectly when you said, "I'm on this permanent adventure." Now, let me ask you something from a content creator point of view, because I got into this totally kind of as a hobby. And yes, I did it as a public service because of what I do, what I did before. But one of the things was just kind of picking up a hobby, and I kind of want to learn how to create and everything else, and started finding out, like you said, it's a lot of work. But one thing that I noticed you said is that it's a lot of work, but you don't feel like you're working. Now, let me ask you this from a content creator's standpoint. You have 3 YouTube channels, and you're relying on these YouTube channels to keep going and everything else. Do you find you have more creativity now that you're in Mexico than maybe you would have had back home, or more time to come up with ideas? How do you feel as a content creator? Do you think living in Mexico gives you that edge as a content creator also? Or from a content creator standpoint, how do you really feel like living in Mexico? Has it increased your creativity? Has it decreased it? Has it opened up more opportunities? How do you feel as a content creator?
That's like an amazing question. That's an amazing question. And I think it's so valuable to talk about. Excellent. Um, in my experience, it's opened my creativity up by I it's a whole new world. When I was back in the States, when I was back in New York, I couldn't be as creative as I wanted to. And the reason why was because I had, of course, another full-time job. So I was really trying to get content out and work my 9 to 5. We'll call it 9 to 5, even though it was like 9 to 11 or whatever it was, 6 a.m. It was actually more like 6 a.m. to like 10 p.m. But not only just because of the time aspect, being able to have more time here, but the life here that Mexico can breathe into you. Like you
Kind of the
wake
state of
up,
mind, kind of like the state of mind. Is that what you,
yes,
uh-huh.
yes, the state of mind, the life that Mexico gives you, the breath of fresh air. When you wake up, you see the sun, you hear the birds, you see the hola, somebody's waving to you, somebody's saying buenos tardes. That love that comes from Mexico, it rejuvenates me, and it makes me feel like, hey, I can be myself, I can be more creative. I actually have started projects here, just little projects, where I don't remember the last time I was able to do a project back in the United States, and it's because my creativity has like blossomed here. But that being said, I want to touch on something else you mentioned. I find myself getting caught up to the point in the beauty here that I need to be like, Joe, you need to get back to your other 2 channels because you're focusing way too much on what you're finding all this joy in, which is this channel, Chasing the American Dream, and experiencing here. So I have been neglecting the 2 other channels, not completely, but I do find that the my focus is more it my focus is where the love is, and the love is here. The love is in Mexico.
Mhm.
So I need to split myself a little bit more, but the creativity has been able to unfold a lot better.
Now, let me ask you this, Brittany, because I'm married, and my wife, I mean, we're totally 2 different people. Like you were saying, you're totally 2 different people. But I think one beautiful thing about with my wife and I, our dynamics is that even though we complement each other. And that's what I kind of see with you guys. I mean, one saying, "Hey, I'm this adventure," and the other one saying, "Yeah, I'm a little bit more grounded." But do you find, Brittany, I mean, because like I've been talking to Joe here and talking about his creativity and everything else, but I'm almost sure that behind that creativity is a lot of you also. Now, do you find yourself, Brittany? I mean, are you enjoying this YouTube stuff too? How do you feel? How do you feel as far as this YouTube thing and going out and showing everybody?
Okay, so trying to think of how I can best answer this question. So Joe had the YouTube channels when we were in New York, and I wasn't like really on those. I wasn't on those channels at all. So this is like our first YouTube channel that we're both a part of. So that's been different. Um, and it's been an adventure. I mean, I do like going out and showing people things, and at the same time, like we have like I think it's really important. Sorry about that.
Oh, don't worry
I
about
think it's really
it.
important that we have like, we show people things, but then you keep some things to yourself. Like you have a balance between your personal life and your adventure life, if that makes sense. So, wow, sorry. So yeah, finding that balance, I think has been really interesting. With the other two channels, I would be like, oh, you're working so much on those YouTube channels. But then like with this one, it's kind of different because like I'm a part of it. So
Hmm.
it's like, oh yeah, there's me. I'm in there too, I guess. So I guess I try to help with the creativity to answer your question. Sometimes Joe will ask me like, do you make me help make me a thumbnail? And then I'll help make him a thumbnail and be like, oh, that's a good one. So like sometimes I help with the thumbnails and
You do a lot.
yeah, I don't know. I don't feel like I do.
She doesn't feel. I'm listening.
He's
Thumbnail. That's like the least of what she
I don't
does.
know. He's a better speaker than me on the
I've been talking on camera for some years now, but Brittany, she probably doesn't even realize it, but she's coming up with ideas. She's saying we need to film this. She's saying people need to know about this. Just when we were at the supermarket earlier today, she said, "Oh, we need to make a video about this." And it's like I never would have thought that, but yeah, it's true. We need to make a video about whatever it was.
Yeah, and she lends balance to that dynamic. That's what I'm seeing right now, just between you guys talking about it. She adds that balance to your guys' dynamic, and I think that's very interesting, and I think that's very important. I think you guys are doing a great job at getting that word out there, showing people everything, and it's a team effort. It truly is. And I think, and actually, here's a good question for you guys. Do you think working together, the YouTube channel, coming to Mexico, because it's a big change, I'm almost sure it's scary. I'm almost sure it was scary for both of you. Reality does hit you because it's hard. It's hard for change. I mean, we can't, but you guys made this change. eh, eh, did you find it very hard to adjust to this change? What I'm trying to get at is, do you find that actually it's made your marriage stronger? That you leaped off a big cliff into something you didn't know you were going to leap into, and you didn't know what was going to be on the bottom. You didn't know whether there's going to be something to save you or not. And you both just jumped off this cliff and you got there. Do you feel that it's made your relationship stronger too?
I personally, like you mentioned, it definitely is a little nerve wracking. It's a little scary. But you mentioned it earlier. It's sometimes if you don't do it, you're just not going to do it. So you have to take that step. And I think people in general are so resilient. I feel like anybody out there who's watching, whether it's you, me, anybody, I think people are so resilient that when they're put in a position where they need to make changes, maybe some people can't, but I think most people can. And so, yes, it's been a little bit of a culture shock. Sometimes you have those days where it's like, well, I don't feel like paying the Sally to do nothing and back me out of my spot. Or sometimes I don't feel like going to the store every day because I don't have a Mexican bank account yet and I can't get deliveries here. Um, Sometimes you have those days, but you do end up working around it. You become stronger because you're putting yourself through that, we'll call it pain. It's not pain, but that discomfort. And you end up seeing that the value that you're gaining through learning how to be different people in general is so worth it. I'm learning Spanish. I mean, my Spanish sucks, but I'm learning it. And it's because I need to learn. I want to learn it. I don't want to be an American here who's just like, you learn my English. No. I want to learn Spanish. And I never would be putting I can't sleep at night because I wake up and I'm translating things in my head. So it's painful. It's a growing experience. If it wasn't for Brittany, I wouldn't be able to handle it. And I feel like if it wasn't for me, she wouldn't be able to handle it. And we are growing together, and we're growing as individuals and as a unit. That's how I feel.
No, and you know what? I see a lot in you, Joe. I see a lot of that personal trainer, that bodybuilder attitude. I guess in the bodybuilding world, you used to say no pain, no gain. In jujitsu, we always say you never lose. You either win or you learn. Um,
Um,
and so there's that kind of I've got to go through discomfort to get to my goal. And it's not really discomfort. Actually, it gets to the point where that discomfort kind of feels good because if I'm getting that soreness, that means it's working. And I think I see a lot of that in you, Joe. It's sort of like I got to go through this discomfort to learn my Spanish, but when I get there, man, it's going to be badass.
right.
That's it's going to be cool, you know. But
Yeah.
do you find now, as far as Brittany, do you find yourself, um, how do you find yourself adjusting to life in Mexico? I see Joe being more of the kind of with that, like I said, that philosophy, that bodybuilder philosophy. And Joe said something really very interesting about being resilient. I think when we go through hard times, we find a way to figure out how to get through those hard times. And this just seems to be a different situation. I mean, it's not necessarily a hard time; it's just a different place and a different uh, adjustment. Now, how do you find yourself, Brittany, adjusting to all of this? Do you find yourself just as excited? Do sometimes you have your days too? How do you feel about all of this?
Hmm. How do I feel? How do It's just like it's a learning experience, you know, like sometimes yeah, you can get I get frustrated like today, like we had to go get the water and I'm like, we just got water like 2 days ago. Now we gotta go get another garrafon and it's like we keep doing so yeah, some days it's like that, like, you know, like you just get frustrated, like um but it is definitely a learning experience. And so yeah, I don't know how to explain how do I feel. I'm trying to think how to answer the question. Um,
And maybe think about how we just ran out of water the other
that
day.
was really frustrating.
Maybe
That was
how,
today, actually.
think
Oh,
about those
oh yeah,
things.
we have experienced problems here with the gas, the water. Yeah, actually.
So, what are your
Yeah.
thoughts in terms of those things?
Um, yeah, I do get very frustrated with things, but then I remember, okay, it's a different culture, it's a different country, so yeah, these things happen. Um, but yeah, it's this is what so like what happened with us, and you were asking, this goes back to your question before, was it spontaneous? We had discussed about moving to Mexico, and what happened is Joe said, he said to me, he said, let's try it for a year. And I was like nervous at first, and then I was kind of like, I don't know. And then I said, okay, Morelia is kind of nice. But we were like, let's go try to see some other places. So on this trip, we went to San Luis Potosí, went to Tlaquepaque. We're back here in Morelia. And so it's all been like a learning experience for me. And I guess you just take it like one day at a time. Like, um, okay, yeah, some things are frustrating, but at the same time, I'm like, you know what? I mean, there's good and bad about every place you go to. So I guess like trying not to get like too frustrated about things when they don't go right, and then like, you know, just kind of going with the flow and like, you know, like, okay, like this is really annoying, but we're gonna get through it or things like that. But it has been, don't get me wrong, it has been a great experience here. I mean, you
No,
just learn so
and
many
do you
new things.
find
Yeah.
here's one thing that I find, Brittany, and I'm just gonna ask you. I know I know things are frustrating here sometimes, especially with bureaucracy and things like running out of water. I actually was in Monterrey when we had the water shortage. They were actually cutting people's water off. Literally not being able to take a shower sometimes can
So,
be a very big frustrating experience. But do you find one thing that I found about myself, and I'm, maybe I guess I'm trying to see if you guys feel the same way, but sometimes the frustration, you learn like patience, like
Yes.
the patience that I didn't have when I was back in the United States. I remember going off on people, and maybe you guys can relate. Well, Brittany, you're from rural New York, and that's a little bit different. But maybe you can relate, Joe. Like you're in New York, and somebody bumps into you, and you just go off because that's the way it works in New York. I worked in New York a couple of times, and I would go into the squad room when I was with the Marshal Service, and everybody be yelling and screaming at each other, and it was kind of like I was like, dude, everybody seems like but that's normal.
Right.
But there's not that patience there. It's like, let's get going. Let's go, let's go, let's go. And at the same time, maybe you kind of learn that patience, and you start thinking, and actually things that are frustrating, yeah, frustrating, but it becomes sort of like, I don't care. That's kind of what has happened to me. And I don't know if it's rubbed off on you guys, but have you kind of noticed that a little bit?
I personally have noticed that, and I it's funny that you mentioned it. I I'm trying to keep a bit of the old Joe. I'm trying to keep a little bit of me here because what I noticed from my experience here so far in Mexico, a lot of people don't really think ahead too much. So, for
Mhm.
example, if I don't tell the landlord, hey, we have no water in the well, and it's Saturday and Saturday's coming, and the water truck's not running on the weekends, we might run out of water on the weekend. So I'm trying to keep a little bit of that New York mentality of kind of thinking ahead, what can go wrong. But at the same time, 100%, when again, when you're put in a position and you see that everyone around you slowed down, everyone around you is on slow mode, and I'm in fast-paced New York mode, it's like, well, you need to slow down, you need to chill, and you need to learn your place. So relax. Somehow Mexico's running, right? So they're doing something right. You'll survive. If you run out of water and you can't shower when you want to at that second, well, you might just need to learn how to wait. So yes, I 100% I get it. I get it. And I'm starting to realize that this is not the old world that I'm trying to get away from. Like I'm not trying to be in New York, so I might as well embrace this and understand that hey, this is what you asked for. Learn to slow down, learn to think differently, and learn to appreciate the fact that you're growing and you're getting stronger through those experiences. If I couldn't take a shower in New York every single day, maybe twice a day, I'd be like flipping out. But if for some reason I run out of water over here and now I'm forced to go through the fact that, hey, I can't shower until it gets fixed, well, now I've just grown from that. So I love and respect that growth, even though it can be painful in the process.
It makes you a better person in a sense. I
Yeah.
mean, having that patience and everything else. We're all human. We're going to get impatient no matter what. It doesn't matter who we are, but I think moving to Mexico has made me a better person in the sense that learning patience. Uh, Now, I had a lot of that instilled into me with the martial arts because in jujitsu, it's a lot about patience. You have to have a lot of patience, and you got to get beaten up a lot. Um, Literally, that's the only way you learn how to read somebody else, how to move in a certain way, how to project yourself in a certain way to trick the other person. It takes a lot of patience because you got to wait for that right moment. But I found myself still living in the United States, and I would get out of the gym from practicing jujitsu, and it would be like I went from one mode to a totally different mode. Now, I had a lot of friends that some of my black belt instructors and stuff like that would be like totally zened out. And I would be like, how did you ever get to that point? And, it's only after years and years of practicing this art because I was still at that point where I couldn't carry that over when I left the gym. And here in Mexico, it's sort of like, I almost felt like, man, I'm back in the jujitsu world of learning how to deal with something and learning how to have the patience and being able to make the right move at the right time, and all of that stuff. And it's just amazing. And I can just speak from my own experience. I want to commend you on, being able to get up, get out there, and really do something, and really learn. And you're just like we were discussing. Life is short. The only thing you take with you is your experiences. I think you guys are on that route. And wherever the world might take you, it may take you back to the States and may keep you here for the rest of your life. But I think I really have to commend you guys for what you've done, and even documenting your journey and showing everybody else the beauty of Mexico. I'd like to let everybody know that they should be checking out their YouTube channel. It's called Chasing the American Dream. They're a small YouTube channel right now, but I really enjoy their content. And I mean, I think you've done everything from getting stopped by the police to all sorts of different things, and it's very interesting. And I think a lot of people need to see that side of Mexico, and I appreciate the work that you guys are doing with your YouTube channel, and I actually have to admire you guys for doing what you're doing and being able to go through that little discomfort. Why don't you tell us, Joe, how, you're on YouTube, if you're on Instagram, tell people how to get a hold of you, um, and your channel. And I really want to thank you for coming on.
Oh, thank you, Ernie. But before I do that, I just want to say you are an amazing resource and human being. We've been watching your channel for quite a while, and we appreciate everything that you give to your viewers, because you're giving facts. You're giving the reality of life here. You're showing the good, you're showing the bad. And so I just wanted to say thank you for everything that you do. We truly appreciate it. We know that there's so many other people who do.
Thank you.
Thank,
And
thank
thank
you. That's my reward. Thank you for those compliments, and I really appreciate it. So, how do we get a
thank
hold of
you.
you, Joe and Brittany?
So yeah, so you can check out our YouTube channel, Chasing the American Dream. We're currently in the description of every video. If you guys want to find my other channels, I believe I post those within that too. If you want to contribute to the channel monetarily or whatever the case might be, you can do that through the link there. But in order to reach us, the best way right now would be through a YouTube comment. We're going to be getting out an Instagram page, because we've originally, when we started this channel, it was just for family. Never had any thoughts of making this what it's becoming. But we realized our families don't even watch the YouTube channel. Other people are. So now we're going to be starting an Instagram page, posting on there. You guys, in the future,
Awesome.
you can hit us up on DMs on Instagram. But in the meantime, reaching out through the channel in a comment would be the best way to find us.
Awesome, awesome. And I really do suggest people check out Chasing the American Dream. And it's an awesome channel. And Joe and Brittany, thank you very much for your time. I really appreciate it. And thank you for giving people the insight on what it's like to live here in Mexico. That's the goal of this series. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you for having
Thank
us.
you.